Assalamu alaikum, peace and blessings. Welcome to the Modest Beauty Podcast. I'm your host, Khalida the Model. Today's special guest is Azizah Kahera, one of my best friends, my cry on the shoulder buddy, my longtime childhood friend, we get together and get goofy and stupid. One of my stylists, because you and Mimi and two other are only 4 people that I actually go to for styling information. We just keep it real, buddies. This is the type of friend that we just keep it real. I would like to welcome Azizah Kahera to my podcast. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for coming.
Walaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Khalida. It's a blessing to be here. Thank you for asking me to join you today. It's an honor to be your guest. And you are correct. We go way back. And so it's just so wonderful to see us come to this point together as friends and sisters, full circle. So I'm honored to be here.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. So for the people who do not know you, or this is their first time really getting to know you, could you share a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So again, my name is Azizah Kahera, and I'm originally from the Northeast in New York, New Jersey area, but kind of I know, right? East side.
So see, there's our goofiness is coming out.
Yeah, so for those listening and watching, you're going to see a lot of goofiness. Yes. Right. But yes, we're from the Northeast. Well, I'm from the Northeast. Well, we both are from the Northeast.
That's right.
And I've kind of been traveling all over the world. In fact, that's kind of how Khalida and I met. Our parents know each other, and they go way back even further. So we could say that we've known each other before birth, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. But currently I live in Atlanta, Georgia. That is my home. It's been my home for the past 20 plus years, which is hard to believe. But I am a consultant by trade. I do a lot of leadership development and equity training based around the umbrella of racial equity, and just really empowering residents to be their best selves and to know that they have all the skills that they need to be successful and to create the change that they're seeking. But in my other life, or in my other past lives, I've done many things, but currently I'm really, really passionate about home styling, home decor, organizing, and really based on the principle that I love. And this is a verse that I've heard in the Quran and the Islamic tradition, is that God, or the creator, loves beauty, right? He is beautiful and he loves beauty. And so I surround the aesthetic around what I do in my home, as well as how I live my life, just embracing and embodying, that idea of beauty. So it's evolved into a hobby that eventually, will evolve even further as a business. And so, I'm really taking all the skills that I've learned over time in my lifetime, and it's culminating into this really cosmic energy that's evolved into this creative space. And it started long before the pandemic, but really evolved during that time because I needed an outlet, like many of us needed, to get through this isolation. But when I say it evolved over time, my father is an architect by trade. My mother, who we will talk more about, was an artist. And so I've always been exposed to creativity in music and the arts. And growing up in the New York and New Jersey area, the diversity of people, and then living overseas, being exposed to diversity. So you would say that I'm a child of, an international child, or somebody who's been exposed internationally. And what you'll notice, in my home decor and my styling, and even the way that I dress, that I really like to experiment with the beauty and embracing the beauty of many cultures.
So let me ask you this: when you went to college, what was your major? Because I remember kind of like communications or something like that, but
yeah.
So that was one of my questions, because I want our listeners and viewers to understand how just because we go to school for one thing, later on, it may not be that. And matter of fact, it may even highlight and supersede what you actually went to school for.
Yes, yes. And life takes many roads and journeys and twists and turns. But what's interesting is that it always leads us to where we're supposed to be, inevitably, if we kind of tap into that. So I went to school, I went to Rutgers University, and I studied Africana studies, and minored in Latino studies. And I wanted to be a teacher. You know, I first wanted to get into the education.
That's what it was. I was like, man, I knew it was something, but it was education. I do remember that now. Yep.
Yeah. So I wanted to become a teacher because, like my mother before me and many of my aunts, they all were educators. And so, you know, I kind of gravitated toward that because I saw the magic of what happened when you can expand the mind and see what, you know, people learn. But I wanted to focus more on the urban space, you know, but it just didn't work out for me because I think that I was just so connected to the struggles that our people were facing, and especially children. It was very difficult for me to separate my wanting to be there for them as an educator, but also be there for them as a human being, you know, in that nurturing space. You know, my mother was able to do it, and she did it well, because she called her children, her students, her babies. You know, she worked with kindergartners. So it was harder for me. And so I ended up with a BA in history. And then when long story short, there are many things that I did, but I ended up coming down to Atlanta and started working for Delta Airlines, as a job. You know, the job that pays the bills when you graduate from college. Wasn't the direction that I wanted to go. But along the way, reconnected with a dear friend, again, who is a mutual friend of Khalida and I, Sister Taiba Taylor, the founder of Azizah magazine. So
may Allah be pleased with her.
I mean, yeah, so Khalida is sharing a picture of the cover of Azizah magazine. This is the last issue of Azizah with Sister Taiba on the cover. So for those who are listening, you can go to azizahmagazine.com or the Instagram that's still up, and you can see the picture of that, what she's showing now. And so Sister Taiba Taylor, may Allah have mercy on her, was the founder of Azizah magazine. And Azizah magazine, for those listening and watching, is a magazine for Muslim women that embody both the beauty of the dear qualities that they have, which is the meaning of Azizah, and also the powerful and the mighty and the strong qualities that they embody.
Keep going, because I have something to say when you.
Sure, absolutely. So it was those two elements, and of course the cosmic nature of life and how God brings us together, that I came upon working with Sister Taiba, because, as I shared before, my mother and Sister Taiba met years ago when we were in Saudi Arabia. And so my mom, being an artist, she ended up being one of the main contributors to the magazine. And then I came on helping.
I was going to say, because you were the operations manager and advertising, am I right?
Yeah, I evolved into that. When I started out, I was just more of an editorial assistant because I still had my full-time job at Delta Airlines, which actually allowed me to travel with Sister Taiba a lot. But I was kind of more of like a mentee at the very beginning. I didn't have like a real title, per se. I evolved into doing editorial assisting and kind of being a mentee, and then working on advertisement. And then eventually I became chief operating officer.
So, when you said earlier what the magazine embodied, fashion, beauty, just understanding a Muslim woman's perspective, and just being in this society as a Muslim woman and being respected, and being contemporary at that. When it first came out, your dad said it was a treat, or amazing, lack of better, his words, because I have to paraphrase, that he saw your name on the cover, the first premiere issue with my face on it. And he made me feel so wonderful, like, and then just the magazine itself coming from the person it was coming from, and the place where she wanted it to be and how she wanted it to be. All three of those things together just made it a beautiful, beautiful magazine. And it was wonderful.
Absolutely. And it was, you can say, a divine inspired and divine authored.
That's right.
You know, because we believe that. I believe that was a divine authored for us to have known each other and been in this circle, but then come together and culminate. You know, because she's had moved from Seattle, Washington, and then moved to Georgia, and so we had moved to Georgia about a year earlier, and so it worked out. And then for many of the viewers who may not know, and listeners, is that her daughter and I actually went to kindergarten together. So, so you know, you could see that it was meant to be 20 plus years later that we worked together. But you're right. I mean, the magazine for me was, and still is, I want to say is, it was a space where, if you think about it, back in the early 2000s and late 90s, there was no representation really for women to see themselves.
Nothing.
You know, in media and publications, in ads, we didn't get the exposure at all. And no one knew what kind of conversations we had. So Azizah was kind of like taking a sneak peek and listening in, like being the fly on the wall, right? And the conversations that Muslim women were having, because yes, we were having those things. We have children, we have husbands, we have careers. We're very multifaceted.
That's right.
You know, human beings, and so we weren't seeing each other. And so Azizah, you know, was and still is a platform that we had, you know, to be our best selves.
That's right. That's right. What do you think was your biggest challenge, I guess, transitioning from what you were there to pay the bills with, to the magazine, to just trying to find your way to what you really wanted to do? What do you feel was your biggest challenge?
I would say that, well, first of all, I want to say that, you know, Azizah Magazine, I worked with Azizah Magazine while I was working at Delta Airlines. So it's kind of juggling two jobs. And, you know, in this day and time, that was like when we really like are accustomed now to working from home and juggling different things. I was really doing it then, you know, working in a full-time space, but then also working part-time at home or at Azizah
offices. Right.
And so it was something that I was accustomed to, but when Sister Taiba transitioned, that's kind of when things kind of shifted a little bit. And so it was difficult. During that time, it wasn't as difficult because she was really flexible with my work schedule and everything. And so we made it work because this was fun. Working with the magazine was like fun. You know, it wasn't even work. So it wasn't. So when she transitioned, of course, a lot of things changed. And so I think that was the hardest part, is like really not having her energy there, because she was not only a mentor, but a mother, on everything to me, and to me coming into my own womanhood. So I think that was the hardest part, with like transitioning away from Azizah Magazine, working there. She always
had some inspirational quotes. She always was smiling. She always would just tell us, you know, like, what are you worried about? What are you worried about, girlfriend? She always used to say that. And I when you think back, and half the stuff we did worry about, we probably shouldn't have been worrying about. But you know, when we have that person in our ear telling us that, it makes things so much better.
Absolutely. And what's amazing is she touched so many lives with that same inspiration, you know, and so that is a life well lived, and you know, and that we definitely emulate, you know, and I know that she'll be proud of you and what you're doing, you know, and all of us that follow in her footsteps. So I would say that was the most challenging kind of juggling, but like life, you juggle with different things, and change happens, you know.
So I know Sister Taiba was one of your influences, but who else had been, or maybe even to this day had been more of an influence on you in your home fashioning or home decorating sense, and you as I want to call you anyway a fashionista, because like I said earlier, you of course, and among your sister are the only two in your family, and also two other sisters, Imani and Fahima, her sister-in-law, are the only four people that I go to for styling. Who do you think has also influenced you big time?
Absolutely. Great question. So I would say my mother, for first and foremost. I'd be remiss to not mention her first, because she was my I mean, that she was and still is, I want to say is, because they're living, right? She still is an influence in my life. She studied fashion and art design at Pratt University.
Yes. I know that.
In Yes, in Brooklyn, New York. So
Brooklyn in the house.
Brooklyn in the house. So, you know, being in Brooklyn, you know, and going to school there, she had all the exposure, but all the talent. You know, she studied music, she sang, she wrote, you know, she was just so creative, you know. And I call her the Muslim Martha Stewart, because everything she touched, you know, turned to gold. So I would say for fashion, for art, for home decor, she just really kind of enthralled herself into it, like really kind of delved into it, and really knew how to make things beautiful. In our home, we always had furniture changed around. She was always painting and putting art up. For even for recipes, she would try things. I would watch her in the kitchen, and she would make, you know, chocolate that was that she embossed with gold, or, you know, to use leaves as like actual real leaves to cut out the chocolate. You know, she used to take eggs that people use for Easter and do gold embossing on them. You know, it was just, and this was like when I was like a small child, you know, so I remember just being at her feet and watching her when she would paint, and it was like a spiritual thing that was happening, because she would just be so into it and so mesmerized by it. But
and she loved doing it. She loved doing it. That was her passion. And
it.
That's why you can get in and do all that, because that was her passion.
Yeah. And so you know, a lot of people say, you know, where's the spirit? The spirit is really in creativity, because that's where the inspiration comes from for how we create. And so that's why I feel personally that it's not something that, you know, it's like when you're living your passion, you're doing what you love. It's perfection. It's just perfect, just the way it is, you know. So there's no real standard, and I saw that come through with her as her artwork and her fashion and everything evolved. So it influenced the way that I dress. It influenced the way that I carry myself, how I prepare things. She was the ultimate hostess. Loved throwing parties.
I remember. I would come and spend the night sometimes, and on that Friday or something, if she has a party on a Saturday, we would be up there cleaning and doing stuff and trying to get it together and being silly and not doing work what we were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so she was the ultimate disciplinarian too. So, you know, we had all the fun, but she would get you straight and get you correct. And so, but the discipline, the perseverance, the creativity, the attention to detail is all the things that I feel like my sisters and I have embodied from my mother. Mafida Abdul Karim is her name. And then my sisters, because I'm the eldest of four girls. I have a younger sister named Zainab, a third younger sister, Habiba, and then the youngest is Amira. And so with all of us, I feel like we all have a bit of her creativity. So I'd say she is number one influence. And then all the aunts that, you know, we had the pleasure of growing up around, like your mother and the sisters in the community in New Jersey, and her best friend, Sister Aisha, Allah Rahma. And Sister Sultana and Sister Lubna. I mean, these are the sisters that
auntie, and we don't even call them sisters. We call them auntie Lubna, auntie Sultana. I mean, they're all the aunties.
They're all the aunties. And so we grew up, and I say we because Khalida and I both, you know, grew up in the same community.
That's right.
these are the women that we were blessed to
Yes.
be around.
Yes.
And so, you know, who we are now, how we dress, how we think, how we move,
All
we
shaped
learn from
from,
them.
yes. Yes.
Our femininity, our,
Yes.
you know, so it wasn't something that we just popped up and, you know, was out here in the streets and we were like, okay, this is a trend. These women were trendsetters way before time.
I know. I keep trying to say that. And sometimes I feel like we didn't even have social media like this back then. And I'm thinking, are they peeking into what, you know, how we were influenced, and are they looking into what we were exposed to? How are they getting all of this? You know what I'm saying? They're just repeating what has already been established by all of the pioneers you're talking about.
Absolutely. And so Sister Ali Abdul Karim, may Allah have mercy on her, is the mother of my friend Majid Abdul Karim, and she has two other beautiful daughters as well. But we used to go to her house, but she always used to say, you know, if you publish or perish, publish or perish.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have control over your narrative,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't certify it and lock it in,
Mm-hmm.
if people can take what you've written and done and use it and say that it's theirs.
That's right.
You know, and so that's the time that we're living in. So like you said, back in the day, we barely had pagers, right? We didn't have cell phones. Computers were just coming around, the internet. So I'm dating myself, but that's okay because that's okay, because that was a good time for honestly, it was a good time.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I think about that, you know, document, mm-hmm. right? Taiba did that, you know, and many other sisters are working towards that. And mm-hmm. I think that's one of the greatest lessons that I'm learning, is that if you want to hold the narrative of your story, mm-hmm. then you have to be the one to tell it. Don't mm-hmm. let anybody else tell your story, you know? Sure.
And I feel that's why I do this Modest Beauty podcast, because I feel like I want to bring in all of the African-American creatives and influences that we have. There's so many of us, you know what I'm saying? That even mm-hmm. some of the aunties that aren't on social media, and we always have to insert their names. We always have to give them credit where credit is due. We have to, because we exist. We're just, I don't know, people aren't getting to us. We are not visible. I don't know, but we're getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that you have to honor your ancestors, you know. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's very much a part of our culture, African culture, is to honor our ancestors and show respect for them. Even when they're in a room, we ask their permission, mm-hmm. you know, first before we present or say or do anything, mm-hmm. right? That's our heritage and that's our culture. And so, yes, we honor them because they've influenced us to who we are now, to who we've become now. But yeah, I think that the Modest Beauty podcast, the things that you're doing with your modeling, you've been modeling for decades. You know, people don't really understand, but Khalida used to model when she could walk. You know, she's always been modeling for a long time.
Who did I start modeling for? That was the very first exposure that I had, was who? Auntie Mufida. And Auntie Lubna after that.
Exactly. And so you have to imagine that, you know, these are the women who studied art, who Sister Lubna Muhammad, or Auntie Lubna, she went to FIT, right? Mm-hmm. So she's a certified fashion designer, and has been in Essence magazine, and has to this day styled and made clothing for
the Jackson 5.
For the Jacksons. I mean, and there's so many people that we probably don't even know, but it's to this day, right? Mm-hmm. That she has styled, you know. And so we know that they're there, but their story just needs to be told. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important that we continue that by representing, being best representatives that we can for them and for ourselves. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, so I love that you have this platform.
Thank you. So here's another question. What is it in your home decor or fashion styles that make you so unique? And I'm sure it's an extension from what you were just talking about, our upbringing, how you were influenced with all of these, but there's something in your home decor and your home fashions that you are cultivating now that makes it more unique than anybody else's.
Well, I would say that and I think this is something that everybody brings to the table if you're in touch with your creativity, is that it's kind of like your divine inspiration. It's the things that you get inspired by. And it's just sharing that, really. At the core, at the essence, that's what it is, right? So like, you love fashion, you love modeling, and so you're using your creativity to create the content and to create the platform for that. So like for me, I got into organizing a lot. I started to learn how to do it. And I just saw that there was this really great energy when your place is organized and clean first before you start designing and decorating it. So, right. But it came from a divine inspiration of the influences that I had with my mother, really paying attention to detail. So the way that I, position my books, where I put, design my coffee tables and, different things like that. Really, I think that it's my inspiration and my creativity based on my personal history and my influence that I'm telling a story about who Azizah is when I create. And so it's influenced by my travels to Arabia, to Africa, being African American, and also being, a child of creative people. To be a child of creative people. So really what I'm hoping to do on my platform is really share with people how you can fall in love with your home. A lot of us we're still in the pandemic. A lot of us are still wanting to find ways to make our home be a place of entertainment. And I think it's also part of our Arabian culture, which I'm influenced to be a good hostess. And so to be a good hostess means you bring the best of the best to your family and to your guests.
That's right.
So it means your home should smell. So it kind of, my creativity and the way I do things is based on the senses. How does it look? How do you feel? Everybody talks about coziness, how do you feel when you enter the space, that you feel at home, that you feel at peace, that nothing is sacred, that you can't sit on a pillow or put your feet up. Because those are the things that my mother would do when people would come over. She would make them feel at home.
She did. You're right.
So it was like the food that you ate, the drink that you, that she made, the scent, the aroma. We listen to jazz. We play jazz in the house. So all of these things contribute to what I would say is my unique style that's based on the influence of my culture, and my community.
Your mom was talented and very creative, very inspirational, and contributed a whole lot. If you could pick one thing from all the creative, inspirational contributions, the most significant contribution to you or to the community, what do you think would be the one thing that was the most, I guess, inspirational contribution?
That she made?
Yeah.
That she made? Oh, wow. Picking one thing is hard. I would say her creativity, because it's not just one thing. It's not like, oh, she volunteered, which she did do, but she volunteered her time in a creative way. So to give you an example, when we moved to Atlanta, after we kind of got settled in for a while, she started getting involved more in the community here, which is there's many communities here, but the community that we kind of attached ourselves to was the Atlanta Masjid of Al-Islam, which is the oldest and the oldest historically African American community that's based on the teachings of Imam Warathy Muhammad al-Arhamu.
Right.
And so they every year would have the fashion shows, the celebrations is what it was called then. Now it's called Sealed Nectar. And so Sister Amira Wazir was the founder amongst other sisters here in Atlanta. And so they're in the age group of, our aunties Lubna and Aisha and Sultana. And so they would have celebrations. So what my mother would do is, like, one year she would help design the program for the fashion show, and she would add her art into it, or she helped do the backdrop. So those were the ways that she volunteered. So I would say she volunteered her creativity to whatever she did. And I would say that that was her greatest gift amongst many things.
And that's why I said she has so much to offer. And that's why I was like, if you can list one thing, and it is hard to list just one thing.
It is hard to list one thing. And then if I could add to that, I would say that there's still things that she's created that you know, are still coming out, are still yet to come out, right? Because, you know, like we said, these women were way before their time. In fact, they surpassed time.
That's right.
With some of the things that they contributed that people are still just tapping into. And so even with her artwork, the ideas that you see a lot of people do now with Ramadan and decorating, and we grew up with that. A long time ago.
I remember, because see, we had to make our own stuff. I remember when I was probably about 4 or 5, my mom made some type of desert scene or some type of to inspire Ramadan coming in, to inspire the whole month of us celebrating and getting together and something new. Well, we didn't have that to go to the store and buy, or she made her own stuff. She created it. I remember these camels, and she went to the beach and got some sand and just made the stuff that you're talking about, that our parents, our families, our moms, and everybody had to create.
Absolutely. Exactly. And so we had to be more creative in the time where there wasn't a space for us. So just like Azizah magazine was in its right, you know, there were many things. There weren't there. I'm sure a lot of communities did creative things, but we didn't have a platform, or we just didn't know, right? Because again, this is before social media. But when we started to see that, there's a lot of connectivity in what a lot of our ancestors and elders did to try to make things creative for us, especially as children growing up in a society that we didn't see ourselves. And so they really, I would say, beyond just what she did in community, she really fostered a platform for us to love being Muslim, to love Islam, because we had our decor, we had our activities, we did things. In fact, I'm going to share.
And we had our fashion, because we had to look good just like everybody else. And your mom was up there sewing and making beautiful Eid outfits and everything.
Right, because we you know, if you have multiple children, you have to make clothes for them, because they didn't have long clothes, you know, beautiful long garments that represented us. I want to be clear, that represented us, because there were, and let's be clear, in the 90s, late 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, right? When I say our community, mostly African American, Latino, or people of color, we are colorful people, right? And so we were wearing colors at a time when it was frowned upon, when people thought, you're being too rambunctious, to being out there, what is this color thing?
Too loud.
It's too loud. Now, it's like, okay, I'm show my stuff. But we've been doing that for a while, right? And we could take something, beautiful garments from our Arab community, from African American community, from the African community, from the Malaysian community, because we embraced it all, and then we created our own. So there are many sisters and many brothers in the communities around the country and around the world that were really trendsetters, and what we like to call trailblazers. Well, first, I definitely want to show my mother. This is a picture of her.
I remember.
So I always keep this. I show this.
Beautiful picture.
Because that's her.
Mashallah.
Actually, my father took that picture of her, because he was doing photography, and so he took a picture of her. And I love this picture.
Yes, mashallah.
I love this picture. Yeah, so that's my mother. And so I wanted to show you all a little bit of some of her designs. So she mostly did painted on canvas. So she did acrylic painting, and then she did, which I can show you something that she did. But she also used to do cards and, Eid cards and different things like that. Because as we were talking about, there were no Hallmark cards, there were no Target cards, that say Eid Mubarak. And so she would actually hand make them. That's right. So here's an example of one of them that says Ramadan on it. And then this one is an Eid card. Let me see if I can show that so you can see.
I see
that it says Eid. And then this is one of my favorites, where she used like embossing and glitter and different things. So really like paying attention to detail, but
I remember
has an
those are so pretty. Those are
yeah,
really
and so
beautiful.
she would make the cards, give them to her friends as gifts, and they would be like, "We love them so much, we don't want to give them away," right? So they would take them and make them into our art. Put them in frames
And Fred, I was
put
gonna
them in
say, and
there
hang them up.
and hang them up. And so I'll just show one more where she transitioned from doing the acrylic painting and more kind of lifelike painting to more Islamic influence painting. And then she went into her kind of black and white phase where she would do very, very detailed, kind of just using pen and ink and then using shapes, sizes that were both influenced by her travels in Africa and Arabia, but incorporated this idea of this African American culture and heritage. And so a lot of my influences in the way that I do home decor is got, all of those components. Plus, my father's from Trinidad, so I have the Caribbean American influence as well. And we're colorful people in every sense of the way. In every sense of the way. So,
yes.
So I feel blessed to have had all of that exposure. Yeah. And so that's what I want around my home, is, the traditional foods, the traditional cultures, and the traditional artistic way of how we express ourselves. Plus being Muslim, we do have Islamic traditions. Okay, we do. We're going to pretend like, no, we don't, do this and do that. But I'm going to tell you, behind closed doors, people have traditions. And so in our household, our tradition, especially during Ramadan, was we would decorate because we were kids, we were small kids. We didn't celebrate Christmas and we didn't have all these other holidays. So we celebrated at home. And okay, it's, some people say it's innovation, it's bid'ah, or innovation. Right. Okay, I get that. But we're struggling with a lot with our children now to continue to help them embrace Islam in a way that doesn't take them away from it and show the beauty of who we are in our family and our history and our culture. So our tradition during Ramadan is we have our Ramadan drink, we had put up the lights and the decorations.
And that's so funny because y'all are putting up lights way before. Right now, I want to say within the last 5, even 10 years, people have been putting up lights, 7 years maybe.
Yes, all the aunties would go during Christmas holiday and get the discounted lights. And they would keep those lights in the house till Ramadan Eid, and we would put our lights up. Yes, I remember. We put our lights up, and we had our, when we had Eids were big, right? Yes, especially for kids. Yes, we would go from house to house, and everybody would get
and it would be gifts. 3 days. 3 days we would be celebrating. It wouldn't be just this one day thing that people are doing because everybody seems like they're just pressed for time or whatever. But out in Atlanta, I think y'all do a whole month.
Yeah, well, actually we did because we had the Eid because it kind of fell on a weekday. So and then we had some so we had some activities one weekend, another Eid, and then I think like 2 weeks later, and then still people talk about Eid. And I'm like, more power to you. We've been in the pandemic, we've been in isolation. Let's all just elevate this and do it up, and that's fine. Yeah. So we had traditions because we have a culture. We have a distinct culture, and so I know that our aunts and our uncles and people that we were surrounded around really taught us how to be Muslim in America. Yep, they did. They
and enjoy it and love it and represent it.
Yeah,
in the way that you know how to represent it.
Exactly. And we embrace so many things. We're multifaceted people. We're not linear. There's something beautiful to say that we have so many angles to who we are, and so that's expressed in the different communities, and we embrace all of them. We embrace all of them.
So I have actually two questions. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to ask first. So you've made it clearly visible, your tremendous amount of experience in home fashion and home decor through your videos and images on social media. But what do you think you would say was the driving force behind you making this move more prominent now, or even your career path down the road?
I think it's the right time. I think, like, the timing is everything. Because I feel like I've had the influence of the sisters that we talked about in the community, plus this strong desire as I get older to leaving a legacy, right? But being able to kind of codify it into a space that can historically be seen as, oh yeah, our ancestors did dot 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 dot, and this is the proof that we did. And so I'm really connected to this calling that, my ancestors are saying, we gave you all these gifts, now do something with it. So it's that strong desire and pull, plus my own, recognizing the timing of our inevitability on this earth, which is a huge part of our doctrine, but then wanting to add my own stamp into it, and then I have a really, really strong desire to make sure that my nieces and my nephews know about their grandmother and their grandfather. My father has written several books about Islamic art and architecture.
I know, and I was involved in a couple of them.
Yes,
I was mentioned.
Yes. Exactly. He's written a lot of books and different things. In fact, I'll get up and just show you a couple of things. And then for those who are not able to see, my father's name is Azizah Kahera. You can follow him on Instagram, as well as look him up on the internet for books and
give me all the websites and all of the handles, the links and everything, and I'll even post them at the end so all of our viewers can go to those as well.
Yes, and you can go to the YouTube channel, Call of the Mile YouTube channel, to see all the links for everything and to see what I've shared on the podcast. But yeah, I think like all of that culminating really has kind of called me into the space of doing this work. And so it's evolving, because I do want to author books. I do want to create things, that I really see that we need more of a presence. We're starting to see it come as Muslim Americans, we're starting to see it more. We still need a little more color in there,
That's right.
But we've always been there. It's just saying, okay, we're valid, and we're validating ourselves.
That's right.
By publishing and producing our own, content and taking ownership for it, because we do have a voice and we do have a story to tell.
And that's where I think where I was trying to figure out which question I wanted to ask, because then this kind of piggybacks off the same one. When did your confidence really kick in and know that, yes, I can really do this? Like this, I can really do this. My confidence is this high and this strong now that I can do this.
Well, it's a constant struggle. I think it's a constant test, because, when you're embarking on a realm that's new, and you're taking the steps towards something that you don't always see yourself represented, or people don't understand it, it can be a scary place, as it is, I think, for most creative people. Content creators or fashionistas or people who do whatever creative, it's definitely a test. So I have my up and down days, but I think one of the things that really motivates me, again, is like really that connectivity to my ancestry, because they were trailblazers, meaning that there wasn't anything else before, and they did it, right? With the security and the faith, and sometimes the challenges, and so it's the faith that
push you.
Yes, it's a good stress, right? We're talking about good stress. So there's that good stress. Plus, my family is always encouraging me and supporting me. My husband, my siblings, and even my nieces and nephews. They're like, Auntie, we follow you. You're doing great. And so I'm really focusing, and I want to encourage others to focus on the quality and not so much the quantity. Be yourself. As
You
long as
and
you
I
love
had this
what you do.
conversation. You and I, and you tell
Yes.
me, last I said, I cry on your shoulder. I'm the one that comes to you for advice. Because you said we had this conversation too about, don't worry about, and then that's why I made a joke. If you heard it the other day, I made a joke that somebody wrote and said, yes, thank you to all of my 4 little followers. Which is nice, because like you're saying, quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Continue. I'm sorry.
No. It is quality of, and you love, and you do it. What is your motivation for doing it? Right. That's the key, is what your motivation is for doing it. I definitely want to see this expand Azizah Kahera from me to a brand, and I'm working on different things and publishing and different things like that, that we haven't launched. So quiet does not mean not working,
That's right.
So,
That's
right. When you see people and you're like, oh, how come you haven't posted today? Or how come I haven't seen you? Or, there's work being done. There's stuff marinating in the pot.
Right.
Right. And so, sometimes you think, oh, well, this is this and that. And, we are a society sometimes that we base things on followers and stuff like that. But
validation of these followers.
Really into your craft, that's not the priority. The priority is doing what you love, and if you want to share it with the world, then you can use those platforms. But there's more things that happen behind the scenes. That's really critical.
So you didn't let your fears hold you back. So at first, I'm sure you did, but you didn't let them hold you back, because you went forward with this. But what was going through your mind when you were embarking on this path? Really?
That I really, what was going through my mind was, well, I will say this. I was doing kind of the home organizing and stuff before, because I really just wanted to create a space in my home that had good energy flow so that I could be more creative. A lot of what holds me back is me, is my own fears, right? So it's not anything or anyone. And that's why I say that's a constant struggle, because that is something that I think we all struggle with as human beings. But I think what really was the caveat into moving more into an online presence was during Ramadan, when I was just like, okay, no, I know we're in isolation. We got to do something.
And so Ramadan recipe party is the one that flourished from there.
Exactly. And so I started Ramadan Recipe Party because I miss being with my sisters. I miss community. And that's another thing that my mother founded, because we used to have Ramadan recipe parties back in the 90s in New Jersey. The sisters would come together, bring their recipes, talk and share.
Yes.
And this is how we enjoyed Ramadan. Ramadan is a beautiful time. And so we didn't have that connectivity. So that's kind of where the online presence came. And then I was like, okay, well, when Ramadan's over, what next? Because I still wanted to have it, that creative space. So, and partly it was more my own kind of way to stay sane out here in the world. And then it turned into something that I became more passionate about. And then I'm learning, with all the ups and downs and the errors and the mistakes and the learning curve, I'm going to enjoy all of it, but at my own pace, at my own pace.
And I think that it's better that way, because if we start to go on the pace of what people think we should be doing or how they feel that we should be presenting, then we will get burnt out, or it won't be our passion, and it won't be something that's driving us to do it because we love to do it. Like you said, it'd just be something, I got to put this out, or I got to put this out, or I got to do this. And it's not going to be quality. It's just going to be fluff.
Exactly. And there are no limitations. I think that you represent that, Khalida, in the modeling industry, is that sometimes we think that, because we reach a certain pinnacle or age, that, it's too late, and I'm going to squash that narrative, because as long as you have breath in your body, right? Look at Iris Eiffel, right? Like she is a fashion icon. This woman is like in her 90s.
I thought she was in her 80s, but you're right, 90s. And Elon Musk's mom. What's her name? Name us.
So these women and men are doing amazing things. She's got a collaboration she did with H&M. There's no limitation. I think as long as you have, like I said, breath in your body, then live to your fullest capacity. And I think it's really great to see more people of color, different age groups. We're trying to diversify how we advertise as well, to be more inclusive. Let's, that's our job. That's our responsibility.
What was it that your mom said to you that stuck with you, or to anybody else? She always used to talk to us all the time, anybody and everybody. Sometimes we had to run away because Auntie Mufida was going to talk to us. She was going to give us some knowledge. She was going to drop some gems. Auntie Mufida was that way, and alhamdulillah, I appreciated that now. But what was it that she said that stuck with you, or that she told somebody else that you overheard her say that stuck with you till this day, 2020?
Well, you're being very kind, because she would grab you, take you, suffocate you. There's a point you could not move. And I don't mean suffocate you like she
I know what you mean.
But I don't want listeners out there thinking, okay, your mom's crazy.
No, she wasn't.
I think she had to be on the border, because talking about somebody who grew up in Lower East Side Manhattan. Okay, right?
That's right. But that's why I said it nicely. I was like, yeah, I had to run away sometimes because sometimes you didn't want to hear it. But we were young. Who wanted to hear anything? You didn't even want to hear it when you were that old, that young, I should say. Now that we're older, you're like, I wish I would have taken every single word that she has said, anything that came out of her mouth, and we would just hang on to now, because we can say that now. But what do you think was something that stuck with you that,
surprisingly, there was a lot of things that she said, but what stuck with me the most was what she did. Maya Angelou says that, we don't remember what people said, but we remember how they treated us, right? Or what they did, but we remember how they treated us. And so I would say for the majority, it's just her just watching her and watching and observing the way that she did things. But I do remember her saying, that, sometimes people just want you to listen, and instead of giving your opinion about everything, right? And so, listening to me is learning. Learning is growing, and so really learning how to listen. And this is something that she, got from my grandmother, because my grandmother's an excellent listener. She's still alive to this day, God bless her. She's like 92, but she's an excellent listener, and so I would say that that's a gem. And then the other thing that wasn't directly from my mother, but from my grandfather, he would always say it can be a lonely road when you're trying to do the right thing, And so I remember those kind of things, but I just remember, how they embodied their lives. And I definitely want to give credit to my father too, because, I have amazing parents. My father was, he's somebody who's pays a very close attention to detail. He's, methodical in the way that he does things, which is why he's such a great architect. But when we were growing up, the discipline in how we did our schoolwork, how we would draw things and paying attention to detail, and then also the discipline with the education, the value of education and reading.
And let me add in, he's very, very patient. Like, I want to say 110, 130, 150, 200%, like patient. Because you remember how Zainab used to be. And just in general.
My sister,
Uncle Akko, I'm telling you, Uncle Akko's very, very patient. So to be detail oriented that way, and to portray that character that you're saying now comes with patience.
Yeah, definitely patient. He has a calm spirit about him, and as he gets older, you can really see it manifest even more. But my sister, Zainab, who called us referencing, she was the opposite of me, let's say. I was quote unquote the good child, not that she was bad, but I was more kind of, not a loner, but to myself.
And listen, you were calm, you listened, you did what you were supposed to do.
Yes, for fear of the consequences.
Yes.
Zainab was the one who was like, consequences, let's see what they look like, right? So she was experimental, and in all honesty, she's a wonderful person, great,
Oh, we
great
love her
sister.
now. I talk to her now, where growing up, of course, she was the little sister. We weren't going to talk to her really, but now I even go to her. We have conversations about just intricate stuff that I would never think that I would be talking to her today about, because she has evolved into a woman that, mashallah, we would never thought she was the way she was when she was little.
Well, she's a straight shooter. You know, I think when she was little, she was a lot like my dad, because he was mischievous. He told us he was mischievous when coming up on the islands in Trinidad, being an only child and having free range of, you know, his mother and grandmother's garden. You know, but I think as she got older, she was like my mother. My mother was a straight shooter. She would give it to you straight. And so Zainab was good. And if I need any motivation, I definitely go to her. But all my siblings, you know, I would say, you know, have been very supportive. Yeah.
So how can our listeners and viewers find you? What are your social media handles? What would you like to share with our viewers and listeners on how to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram as Azizah Kahera. So that's my first and last name, Azizah Kahera. I also host annually, the Ramadan Recipe Party. So it's listed as it's stated, Ramadan Recipe Party. So you won't see much activity on there now because it's an annual thing. We took a break this year, but next year, God willing, we'll be doing it. Hopefully, we are already in motion to try to do it in person. So I'm really excited about us coming out of the isolation and you know, and in person again. So those are the two, but I'm really active on Instagram at Azizah Kahera. And so that's where folks can find me. And then I'll be, for the home decor, for creativity, I'll be doing some DIYs and different things over time. Yeah. So cool. That's my home.
So what can you share with our viewers and listeners if they want to, I guess, have a career change or want to maybe get into home decor or home fashion? What would you like to leave our listeners and viewers with? Any thoughts or any suggestions?
One thing my sister Amira always tells me, she says, feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear.
Only and do it. I need that. I need that. Let me write that down right now. Feel the fear, you said?
Yes, feel the fear and do it anyway. So yes, we are human beings and we're going to be afraid and we're going to have our fears. Because like I shared with you earlier, our biggest fear is ourselves, or our biggest obstacle is ourselves. Sometimes for me, I would say the biggest fear is that it could become so great that I lose myself, or it could become so great that I'm not able to manage it, you know? But feel that fear, feel it. Yeah, I feel that way. I embrace it, but just do it anyway and see what could happen, you know, just see what could happen. And so that's what I'm really striving for. Patient, like you said, really being patient with the process and learning, and knowing that everything has the right time. So if you're seeking, the higher the goal that you're seeking, the more patient that you have to be, because it is about timing, you know, and trust yourself, listen to your intuition, because it will always serve you, you know, and that's pretty much it, you know, and have fun. You know, I'm having a lot of fun. You know, and I would say this, make space for yourself to be creative, and you don't have to worry about always putting it online. You know, do some things, but make time for yourself.
And it would come natural, like when you just make, like you said, create the space and it still looks beautiful. You may have to record the steps that you did, but just taking it right then and there, and you may say, I just want to put this online. And then all of a sudden people are, where'd you get this vase? Where'd you get this book? Where'd you get this so-and-so? Where'd you get the color from? You know, and then all of a sudden it all comes together where you start to just list it. But that's just like you putting together a comfortable space for yourself.
Exactly. And so I think that would be the advice that I would give for just career shifts or changes or embracing your creativity. Allow space for that, even if you have to work a traditional job, which is what I do. But for the home specifically, right now I'm just showcasing and displaying, but I'll get definitely more into instructional things based on what I've learned from my mother and others. I do want to acknowledge that there are a lot of sisters that are doing some great work, that are real professional, seasoned interior designers, out there. So it's like Sauda Salim and the sister Aida's Creative Life. I follow her. I follow a lot of African American and Latino and people of color designers, because they don't get the respect that's due.
Nope.
So these are real creative people, and I'm following in their footsteps, but I also have the background and the influence of my parents. And so I'm leading with that, and then, working and learning along the way. But there are a lot of ways that you can really enjoy your space, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to do it, So we'll talk on my platform. We'll definitely talk more about how you do that,
Well, I really, really appreciate you coming on and taking your time out and joining us on our Modest Beauty podcast. You have given us so much information and just a peek in your life, and also giving a highlight and respect to your mom and all of the aunties and all of the influencers who have come into your life to make you the person who you are today, to continue in sharing with us. I really, really appreciate that. And I hope our listeners and viewers have also taken away some gems, and also have taken away some advice and suggestions that they too can use as well. I would like to leave with, unless you have something else to say.
I know. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it. I would like to say, be fashionable, be trendy, and be modest. Thank you so much.